Isn't she a beaut? That's XJ number 6. Okay, now this video is not about XJs per se, but that is the 6th one that I've added to the fleet. Now there's a method to my madness, and this is part of a trend. Okay, this is something that I've been talking about for years, but the general public is really just starting to catch on now. And vehicles like this XJ, like I said, this video isn't about XJs. It's about a trend, a bigger trend, and one that I've already lived through this once before, years ago. History doesn't repeat exactly, but it almost always rhymes. And what's happening right now is an awareness among the general population, so not like the blood and guts car guys like us, okay? But the general population, that today's cars are missing something, okay? And that something is survivability, okay? This is very important stuff. Cars over the last 15 or 20 years have become extremely overcomplicated. Blame it on the CAN bus. Blame it on just engineers running amok with whatever technology they can stuff into a car. Blame it on the consumer for buying things that are overcomplicated without any real thought for long-term survivability. Whatever the case, the general public is now starting to catch on. They're getting it, okay? And I say this because I keep seeing more and more videos pop up concerning the unrepairability, the futile nature of today's used cars. So a car that 10, 12, 15 years old that's still got plenty, in theory, should still have plenty of mileage left, beautiful interior, beautiful body, paint, everything's just nice, but it's dead. I keep seeing videos about how parts for these newer cars are not available or becoming scarce or extremely overpriced. I keep seeing bits of technology to completely run amok, and we've done videos on these, like the Ford, the F-150 taillight that cost $50-something $100. By the time the smoke cleared, a little water got in the taillight, and it completely fried everything. Just recently, a couple of days ago, I saw a video on a channel. I think it's South Main Auto Repair. I can't remember the name of the channel. Excuse me, but this was about a Kia with a backup camera. That the camera shorted and it bricked the car. Okay, backup camera, because a mirror is not good enough. You need a backup camera, and because this backup camera is so integrated into the car's all its systems and whatnot, when it shorted or whatever happened to it, done. Car's not running. Simple temporary fix was unplug the light and everything started working again. But that's beside the point. When you've got a simple, stupid failure like a cracked taillight or a backup camera that goes bad, and now the car is stuck and people can't fix them. They scratch their heads. There's so many reasons. But today's cars, either by evolution or by design, okay, have become disposable. They have no hope of aging. They have no hope of becoming collectibles down the road. And we talked about that too with parts. There are so many different parts and systems that are involved in a modern car that for the aftermarket, for the manufacturers and for the aftermarket, to keep parts for these things on the shelf, service parts, beyond 5, 6, 7 years, it's nearly impossible because they change these things. Each model and each system gets changed continuously, and to keep up with all of it and keep everything on the shelf ready to go for a customer, no, that's not going to happen. So this is becoming more and more prevalent. I keep seeing more and more videos about this and more talk about this. Now, what's happening now is not much different than what happened during the, let's say, the late 70s and the very early 1980s with the muscle car movement, okay? Now, today you have all of these elements that seem to be conspiring to take all the fun out of our world, okay? Oh, you're not going to be able to buy gas anymore. Oh, they're not going to let you register a car, beyond X amount of years anymore. Oh, you won't be able to buy parts for a car beyond X amount of years anymore. Oh, you won't be able to register it. Oh, they're going to do this, they're going to do that, they're going to come in and torture you, or whatever it is. Constant fear. Well, you know what? In the 70s, we had exactly the same thing. In the 70s, it was the insurance companies that are not going to allow hot rods anymore. The government is going to put a limit on how much power you can use. There's so many different things. There's not going to be gas in 10 years. By 1990, there won't be any gasoline available, so we're going to have to just not drive. They were talking about electric cars back then, too. All of this fear stuff, constant fear, none of it came to pass, right? None of it came to pass. Life just kept going forward, okay? But during that period of time, the muscle car that we know today, the classic era muscle car, so Chevelles and Roadrunners and Chargers, right? They were out of favor. They were out of style. They were old cars. And that's all they really were to most people, is just they were old cars. The junkyards were full of them. But then around, actually about 1980 or so, it became apparent to everybody that this era was never going to come again. Well, they were wrong. They were wrong, because it kind of did come again in a way. But that's besides the point. Around 1980 or so, it became apparent to most people that Detroit was never going to build cool cars like this anymore, and that we got to start hoarding these things. We got to start finding them and saving them and hoarding parts and so on and so forth. And so that's when the muscle car became collectible, right around 1980. Now, during this period of time, even though they were collectible, the prices were still very, very reasonable for good running examples. But at the same time, the junkyards were full of these things. People were leaving them on the side of their houses and in their backyards to just sit and rot, without any real thought of what the collector value might be, because collector value wasn't assigned to these things yet. They were just old cars. As the 80s progressed, the general public kind of caught on, and muscle car fever hit, and now everything started to be worth money. Now, the early adopters, and I was one of them, okay? The early adopters to this movement in, let's say, the middle to late 70s, saw the value in these cars, and we bought as many as we could. I bounced from one thing to another as far as like life goes, but guys who got into the muscle car thing in the late 70s or early 80s and stuck with it made fortunes. They built huge businesses. They made fortunes, and they got to have their cake and they ate it too, because they bought these cars, they hoarded these cars, they kept what they wanted for themselves, they flipped other ones, they did parts, and just so many people made so much money. It became a really nice industry that's still thriving to this day. All right, now, here we are, it's 2025, and it's becoming known among the general population, right, that today's cars are different than cars that were built in the past. And being able to just keep it alive, right? Just being able to visit your mechanic and have him make a simple repair and then just go on down the road, those days are coming to an end. And so the general public is starting to catch on. They're saying, you know what? I want a car that I can keep. I want a car that I can either work on myself or a mechanic can work on, or it's easy to get parts for. I want a car that when something goes wrong with it, it's not laid up for 6 months while it bounces from shop to shop to shop, where they scratch their head and keep firing the parts cannon at it. I want a car like I had back in 1999, where it just needs to tune up and brakes, and every once in a while it needs a repair, but it's not a big deal. They're starting to catch on to that. And because of that, certain cars that are known, and it's important now, okay? Certain cars that are known to have a good reputation for being rugged, for being dependable, for being easy to repair, those are the cars that are the next, like the way muscle cars were the thing to collect in the 1980s and the 1990s. Well, now it's going to be cars that are rugged and simple and repairable and survivable. Those are the next wave of collector cars. And this is where you guys got to start doing your homework, okay? So, like I said, I've got 6 of these things now. I never even gave XJs a second thought until I bought my first one. It's going about 4 years ago now. And I fell in love with it. And I says, this is it. I need these things. And so since that period of time, since that time, I've been slowly accumulating and adding to a fleet. And like I said, I'm at 6 now. So I don't go actively looking for them. I'm not shaking the trees trying to get XJs to fall out. But I specifically look for a certain year range in the XJ line. And I specifically look for rust-free, unmodified XJs, because they're hard to come by. And during this past 4 years that I've been doing this, I've been watching the prices of unmodified, rust-free XJs climb. I mean, exponentially. They're getting a little crazy. I'm seeing prices on some cars, on some of these things, these XJs, like double in the time that I'm looking for them. I just looked at, I was looking at one, didn't actually go to see it. It was a 96 4-cylinder stick, right? 4-cylinder 5-speed. 2-door. Okay, so it's a desirable. It's kind of unusual, a little bit desirable, but it was really nice, rust-free, nice interior, nice original paint. $12,000 bucks. $12,000 you know, for an XJ. In the meantime, if you go right down the road from, you know, right down the road from my shop over here, you go to Laverne Pull and Save. Well, there's always 3 or 4 or 5 XJs just sitting there on the scrap line. You see what I'm saying? So we're at that period of time right now where some of these things are really starting to appreciate in value, and some of them are completely under the radar. And right now, if I was to drive around my area, let's say within a 20-mile radius, I just go driving the back roads, I'll find a dozen of these things just sitting behind people's houses or off on the side of the house in a driveway with the plates off, because they're common, they were around, they're still around, and they're there to be had. Because the average person hasn't really caught on to the value of this. Exactly the same way that somebody in 1979, 1980 would have like a 68 Charger, a 69 Charger sitting on the side of their house, and they'd take $50 for the thing because, well, it's just an old car, it's just an old Dodge, right? Same exact thing is happening right now. So like I said, my choice is XJs. I just fell in love with these things. And I have like an XJ for every occasion now. I have a few of these that are just daily drivers, you know, regular, just, you know, use them. I keep them in rotation. When I'm working on one, I use another. I have one that's a 4-wheel drive. Actually, I have 2 that are 4-wheel drive. I prefer the 2-wheel for, you know, for general purposes. So that's what I look for. But I have 2 that are 4-wheel drive. I have one that's set up for drag racing, Mission Improbable. So I have an XJ for every occasion. And I'm accumulating parts, and I've got extra everything, right? You name it, I've got an extra one of it or 2 of it sitting around now. So, but that's my thing with these. That does not necessarily have to be yours. It doesn't have to be a specific car. But here's what you look for. If you're looking to get into this, if you want to cash in on this movement as it's growing at this point, okay, what you want to look for are cars built before, let's say, the CAN bus era, previous to 2010, 2005. If you really want to be safe about it, stick, you know, from an investment standpoint, stick to like 2000 and older, okay? All right. Only go for cars, look for cars that have an already established cult following. Like the XJ has a huge global cult following, right? And I say this because no matter what happens with the bigger picture as far as parts availability and stuff like that goes, if it's got a cult following, there will always be hobbyists, there'll always be machinists, there'll always be hoarders, there'll always be people who are involved in them. So you'll always be able to find what you need, or at least find the knowledge that you need to keep yours going, okay? Very, very important. Don't get involved, don't get involved in orphan cars, or ones that people aren't, you know, it's like you've got the only, you know, 1999 Kia Forwenza or whatever the hell it is, right? You're the only one, you're all by yourself, okay? But an early Miata, you have people all over the world that are into these things, so you'll always be able to get parts. They already have basically an established value, like an established floor, right? So stay away from orphan parts. Let's say Fox bodies, right? Anything in the Fox body range from 1978, 1979, whatever they launched that in the Fairmont, until the end. Fox bodies in all configurations. definitely. The Panther platform's another one. OBS, like square body, like Chevy trucks, GM trucks, Ford trucks, anything that has an established cult following and a strong aftermarket, support. I'm telling you, start looking to buy these things. Buy as many as you can, right? And the deals are out there. It's hard to find deals on already very established things like something like square body Chevys, but they're out there. They're out there. Start hoarding, right? And if you play your cards right, you have your cake and you eat it too, just like the muscle car guys did. We had fun with those cars. We had fun with them. We took them to the track. We beat them up. We street raced them. We did all kinds of things. And at the same time, they were increasing in value, right? Value is something that's very important that you have to understand, right? All cars, okay, the 99.9% of cars start out at whatever price they are brand new, okay? And then eventually they reach a bottom of the depreciation curve. They're all eventually worth scrap. And then once there's enough of them out of the system and they kind of become an oddity, well, now it turns around and starts heading back up again. You see? And that's what I'm saying. Like we had with the road runners and the Chargers and whatnot back in the day. It was the same thing. They were worth nothing. Nobody wanted them. We loved them. We would pay amongst each other pretty good money for the time for these cars. But generally speaking, they were at the bottom of the depreciation range. And so you could go hunting and come up with some really good deals. This is a trend, I believe, no, I don't believe, I know, I can see it, it's happening. This is a trend that's taking root now. And this is it's a knowledge that's becoming common. And I'm telling you right now, people with money, people with resources, this is where they're going to go next. They're going to look for survivable cars. Survivable cars. And I'm telling you what the criteria, what you want to look for. Cult following, strong aftermarket support. Right? Cars that were built in a great enough number so that the parts are out there, and a great enough number that you can still find derelicts. So here's an example. Now I bought this yesterday off of Facebook Marketplace. Well, I was not looking for an XJ, but my eyes are always open, okay? So this thing pops up, and it's a 2000. It's got, it's only got 153,000 miles on it, okay? It's a two-wheel drive, which is what I look for. So to me, it's a bonus. There's a big difference between the way the two-wheel drive and the four-wheel drive hit the road, not going off-road, but to drive them as like everyday cars. There's a significant difference in feel, and there's a 5 mile per gallon difference in fuel economy because you're not having to drag the differential and the transfer case through oil as you're going down the road. There's also a big difference in handling because you don't have all of that inertia having to make, hit the front axle. So the two-wheel drives handle like sports cars. Four-wheel drive is a little bit, a little sluggish comparatively. So this thing's on Marketplace, pops up. It was listed a few hours before I messaged on it. They said that it ran, it drove. I looked at the pictures. The body was straight. The paint is dead on the hood and on the roof, but on the side it's nice. It's actually a pretty rare color. It looks brown right now because it's still dirty, but it's a sienna pearl, and it's actually a very beautiful color when it comes up. Interior is really nice. I mean, it hits the road beautifully. So they had it listed for $2,000, and I'm like, how do you beat that? Okay, so I messaged them, and I said to them, all I said to them, because I didn't want to bother going out there. They were 100 miles away, and I didn't want to bother going out there to haggle. So I just right off the bat, what's your absolute bottom dollar on this thing? And they said $1,500, and I says sold, right? Because for $1,500, I don't care if it's got a rod knock. I don't care if the transmission is gone. I don't get $1,500 for a rust-free, good interior, straight, XJ. Sold. $1,500, you got it, right? Because I know the value of these things. I see where the value is going. So made a deal, and here she is. I ran it over this morning. I put some new tires on it. I got to let my friend Deshaun get to the interior. He's a detailer. Let him knock out the interior. By the time the smoke it clears, I'm going to have probably around $2,100 or $2,200 in this thing. Minus, I'm going to paint the hood and the roof. We'll cover that in video. But that's it. I'll have maybe 2,200 bucks on this thing, and it'll be functional everyday, transportation that's going to increase in value constantly as I use it, right? Appreciating asset, right? That's the difference between this type of car and, let's say you go to the used car lot and you buy a 10, 15, 20-year-old car, right? Most of them, they're a hole. They're a hole in the ground you just keep shoving money into. Where this thing, as you drive it, it's appreciating in value. So the longer I hold on to this, the more it's going to be worth. I could probably turn around, if I paint this thing, now again, it's completely rust-free and it's low mileage for an X-Ray. It's 157,000 miles on it. I can paint this thing, detail the interior, and this is an easy $7,500, $8,000 vehicle. How do you beat that? And that's today's prices. The trend, people are piling into this now. This is the time to start looking, right? Trust me on this, because I have been down this road before. I have lived this before. I'm living it again. This is really deja vu for me. I'm telling you where the deals are. Go out, start hunting, start hoarding and collecting. Pick your specialty. Like this is whatever it happens to be. Pick your specialty and dive in, because it's going to be really good for the next several years. All right, guys. I'll see you tomorrow.